They laughed when she raised her hand saying she wanted that dog, but when she revealed who her father was and what had happened to her dog, no one could say a word. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The morning air was crisp and biting as Emma Matthews pulled up to the county fairgrounds. Her hands trembled slightly against the steering wheel, not from the autumn chill, but from the weight of what she was about to do. 23 years old, with chestnut hair gathered in a practical ponytail and green eyes that had seen too much sorrow for someone so young, Emma took a deep breath and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the distant barking that emanated from the large barn at the center of the fairgrounds. The German Shepherd auction was one of the biggest in the state, drawing breeders, trainers, and law enforcement agencies from 3 states over. Emma had marked this date on her calendar months ago, circling it in red and counting down the days with equal parts dread and determination. As she stepped out of her car, the weight of her father's badge pressed against her chest, where she kept it in her inner jacket pocket. Detective Michael Matthews had been one of Denver's finest, a K-9 unit officer whose name had become legendary in the department. That was before the warehouse raid that had gone terribly wrong 6 months ago. Emma shuddered, pushing away the memory of the 3 a.m. phone call that had shattered her world. Instead, she focused on walking toward the registration tent, where a middle-aged woman with a clipboard looked up with a practiced smile. "Good morning. Are you here for the auction, bidder, or just browsing?" "Bidder," Emma replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Emma Matthews." The woman's eyes flickered with recognition. "Matthews? Any relation to Detective Matthews from Denver PD?" Emma swallowed hard. "He was my father." The woman's smile faded, replaced by genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry, honey. The whole K-9 community felt that loss. Mike was one of the good ones." "Thank you," Emma replied automatically, the response worn smooth from months of condolences. She accepted her bidder's paddle, number 47, and headed toward the barn. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with excitement. Rows of metal chairs faced a small arena where each dog would be presented. Around the perimeter, temporary kennels housed the German Shepherds awaiting their turn. The air was filled with the mingled scents of hay, animals, and coffee from a small concession stand in the corner. Emma found a seat in the back row, her eyes scanning the program she'd been handed. 26 German Shepherds would be auctioned today, each with detailed information about their lineage, training, and temperament. Her gaze lingered on lot number 17, a 3-year-old male named Commander. A tall man in a sheriff's uniform took a seat beside her, nodding politely. "First auction?" he asked, noticing her white-knuckled grip on the program. "Is it that obvious?" Emma attempted a smile. "A little. I'm Sheriff Davis from Glenwood County. We're looking to add 2 dogs to our K-9 unit today." "Emma Matthews," she introduced herself, deliberately leaving out any mention of her father or her reasons for being there. The sheriff's eyes widened slightly. "Matthews, are you?" "Detective Matthews' daughter, yes," Emma finished for him, her tone gentle but firm, closing that avenue of conversation. The sheriff nodded respectfully. "Well, good luck today, Ms. Matthews." The auction began with lot number 1, a young female with impressive obedience scores. The bidding was fast-paced, the auctioneer's rapid-fire delivery adding to the intensity of the atmosphere. Emma watched carefully, getting a feel for the rhythm of the event, noting which agencies and individuals were bidding on which dogs. As each German Shepherd was brought out, Emma felt a tightening in her chest. They were magnificent animals, powerful and intelligent, reminding her of her father's partner, Rex. Growing up, Rex had been as much a part of their family as any human member. Her father's connection to his K-9 partner had been something special to witness. a bond forged through trust and shared purpose. By the time they reached lot number 10, Emma had begun to understand the subtle dynamics at play. The law enforcement agencies had bigger budgets, often outbidding private citizens. Certain bloodlines commanded higher prices, as did dogs with specific training certifications. During a brief intermission, Emma stepped outside for some air. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. She wasn't wealthy, her job as a veterinary technician paid modestly, and she'd emptied her savings account and taken a loan from her mother for this. There would be no second chances. "Hey there." Emma turned to find a young man about her age approaching. He wore the khaki uniform of the auction staff, a name tag identifying him as Jason. "I noticed you sitting in the back," he said. "First time at one of these?" Emma nodded. "That obvious?" "You've got that taking it all in look." He smiled warmly. "You're here for a specific dog?" Something in his friendly demeanor made Emma let down her guard slightly. "Lot 17, Commander." Jason's eyebrows rose. "Commander? Interesting choice. He's not exactly what most first-time owners look for." Emma's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean?" "He's got an unusual history. Fully trained for police work, but..." Jason hesitated. "Well, you'll see when they bring him out. Just be prepared for some intense bidding on that one. Several departments have their eye on him." Before Emma could ask more questions, the bell rang, signaling the resumption of the auction. She hurried back to her seat, her mind racing with questions about Commander and what made him special. The next few lots passed in a blur of barking and bidding. Emma's anxiety grew as they approached lot 17. She carefully counted the money in her envelope again, though she knew exactly how much was there. $15,000, every cent she could possibly gather. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's voice boomed, "we come to lot number 17. Commander, a 3-year-old male with exceptional lineage, fully trained for police work with certifications in narcotics detection, tracking, and apprehension." 2 handlers led Commander into the arena. Emma's breath caught in her throat. He was magnificent, larger than the average German shepherd, with a dark saddle marking over his fawn-colored body. He moved with power and grace, alert to everything around him. But it was his eyes that captured Emma's attention, intelligent, intense, and somehow carrying a depth of experience that seemed almost human. "Commander has a unique background," the auctioneer continued, his tone shifting slightly. "He served with the Denver Police Department's K-9 unit until 6 months ago. His handler, Detective Michael Matthews, was killed in the line of duty. Commander was wounded in the same incident but has made a full physical recovery." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma felt all the air leave her lungs. She hadn't known. Her father's dog had been retired after the incident, and in her grief, she'd lost track of what had happened to him. The department had said something about Commander being too traumatized to continue service, about him being rehomed, but the details had been lost in the fog of funeral arrangements and trying to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. "Starting bid for Commander is $5,000, the auctioneer announced. Paddles shot up around the room. $5,000 quickly became $7,000, then $10,000. Emma raised her paddle, her heart pounding. The sheriff beside her gave her a curious look but said nothing. $12,000 to bidder number 47, the auctioneer called. "Do I hear $13,000? A man in the front row raised his paddle. The bidding continued, tense and rapid. $14,500 to bidder number 23. "Do I hear $15,000? Emma's hand trembled as she raised her paddle one final time. This was everything she had. $15,000 to bidder number 47, the auctioneer called. "Do I hear $15,500? The man in the front row conferred briefly with a colleague, then reluctantly shook his head. $15,000 going once, going twice. The auctioneer scanned the room. "Sold to bidder number 47. A wave of relief washed over Emma, so powerful she felt lightheaded. She'd done it. She'd found her father's partner, and she was taking him home. As she made her way to the payment office, the sheriff fell into step beside her. "That's a lot of money for someone your age," he remarked, not unkindly. "Mind if I ask why?" Emma looked him in the eye, finding strength in finally being able to speak her purpose aloud. "Commander was my father's dog. They went through everything together. I didn't even know he was here until today. But now I'm taking him home where he belongs." The sheriff nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Your father would be proud." "That's not why I'm doing it," Emma replied quietly. "I'm doing it because Commander deserves to be with family, and because—" She hesitated, the real reason still too raw, too personal to share with a stranger. "Because my father's killer is still out there," she thought but didn't say. "And Commander is the only witness to what really happened that night." The sheriff seemed to sense there was more to her story but didn't press. "Well, good luck to you, Ms. Matthews. Commander is getting a second chance with you, and that's a fine thing." Emma completed the payment process in a daze, signing papers and listening to instructions about Commander's care and feeding. Finally, Jason led her to where Commander was waiting in a temporary holding area. The German Shepherd stood alert as they approached, his ears forward, his intelligent eyes assessing Emma with an intensity that took her breath away. "Hey, Commander," she said softly, kneeling down to his level. "You probably don't remember me. I used to visit Dad at the training center sometimes." At the mention of Dad, Commander's ears twitched. He took a step forward, sniffing cautiously at Emma's extended hand. Then, to the surprise of everyone watching, he moved closer, pressing his muzzle against her jacket, right where her father's badge lay hidden in the inner pocket. "He remembers," Jason whispered, amazed. "I've never seen him respond to anyone like that since." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Commander leaned against her, a soft whine escaping him. She wrapped her arms around his powerful neck, burying her face in his fur. "We're going home, boy," she whispered, "and then we have work to do." As she led Commander to her car, Emma felt the weight of her secret purpose settle more firmly on her shoulders. The official report said her father had been killed by a cornered drug dealer, a simple case of an operation gone wrong. But the evidence didn't add up, and her questions had been met with evasive answers and closed doors. Commander was the only one who knew the truth. And somehow, Emma was going to find a way to unlock that truth and bring justice to her father's memory. The drive home was surreal. Emma kept glancing in the rearview mirror, still hardly believing that Commander was really there, sitting alertly in her back seat. His intelligent eyes met hers each time, steady and watchful. She wondered what was going through his mind, if he understood what was happening, or if he was simply processing this new change in his life with the adaptability that made German Shepherds such exceptional working dogs. "It's about 30 minutes to my place," she told him, feeling slightly foolish for narrating their journey but unable to bear the silence. "It's not much, just a small house with a fenced yard. It was Dad's. I moved in after everything." Commander's ears perked up at the mention of Dad, just as they had at the auction. Emma's heart constricted. The bond between her father and his K-9 partner had been legendary within the department. They'd been together for 3 years, had the highest success rate in drug busts, and had saved each other's lives more than once. As she pulled into the driveway of the modest bungalow on the outskirts of Denver, Emma felt a momentary panic. What if Commander didn't adjust to living with her? What if the trauma of that night had changed him irrevocably? She was no K-9 handler, just a vet tech with a burning need for answers and justice. "Well, this is it," she said, turning off the engine. "Home." She opened the back door carefully, attaching the new leash she'd purchased to Commander's collar. He stepped out with dignity, his nose immediately working to process all the scents around him. Emma watched as he surveyed the property, his body language alert but not tense. Then something changed. Commander's posture shifted, his ears swiveling forward as he stared at the house. A small whine escaped him, and he pulled gently on the leash, leading Emma toward the front door rather than being led. "You remember," Emma whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "You've been here before." Of course he had. Her father had brought Commander home for dinner at least once a month. The dog had played in this very yard, had slept by the fireplace during family gatherings. This had been his second home. Inside, Commander moved with purpose, his nails clicking on the hardwood floors as he made a circuit of the living room, kitchen, and hallway. He paused at the door to her father's study, looking back at Emma expectantly. "Okay," she said softly, opening the door. The study was largely as her father had left it. Emma hadn't had the heart to change much, though she'd boxed up some of his personal effects. The large desk still dominated the room, bookshelves lined the walls, and a worn leather armchair sat in the corner. Beside it lay an old dog bed, faded but clean. Commander walked directly to the bed, sniffed it thoroughly, then turned 3 times before settling down with a deep sigh. The sight broke something open inside Emma, and she sank to her knees beside him, burying her face in his fur, as silent tears came. "I miss him too," she whispered. "So much." Commander pressed against her, offering a solid warmth that was the first real comfort Emma had felt since the night her father died. After a few minutes, she wiped her eyes and stood up. "Let me show you the rest of the place, and then we should both eat something." The tour was quick. It was a small house. Emma had converted the spare bedroom into her own, leaving her father's room largely untouched. Commander followed her dutifully, taking everything in, but he seemed most at ease in the study. "You can sleep wherever you want," she told him as she prepared a simple dinner for herself and filled the new dog bowl with the premium food the auction handlers had recommended. "I'm guessing you'll pick Dad's study, at least for now." As they ate, Emma at the kitchen table, Commander from his bowl nearby, she found herself talking to him, explaining how she'd come to be at the auction. "I didn't know you'd be there. I was looking for a German Shepherd with police training because—" She hesitated, feeling strange about sharing her plans with a dog, yet somehow certain he was listening intently. "Because I need help figuring out what really happened to Dad." Commander's ears twitched forward. "The official report says it was Alvarez, that he was cornered and desperate and shot Dad before you could take him down. That you were injured trying to protect Dad." Emma's voice grew tighter. "But it doesn't add up. Dad was too experienced, too careful, and there were inconsistencies in the reports, things that didn't make sense." She'd spent months gathering what information she could, using her father's old contacts, piecing together fragments of the truth. The raid had been on a warehouse supposedly used by the Alvarez cartel for drug distribution. Her father and Commander had gone in with a team of 6 other officers. Somehow they'd gotten separated from the main group. By the time backup reached them, her father was dead, Commander was badly wounded, and the only suspect present, Diego Alvarez himself, was also dead, apparently shot by her father before he succumbed to his own injuries. A clean narrative. Too clean. "Nobody will talk to me about it anymore," Emma continued, picking at her food without much appetite. "They say it's case closed, that I should try to move on, but I can't. Not when I know there's more to the story." Commander had finished eating and now sat watching her, his brown eyes so intense that Emma could almost believe he understood every word. "You were there," she said softly. "You saw what happened. If only you could tell me." After dinner, Emma took Commander for a walk around the neighborhood. The familiar routine, so reminiscent of countless evenings when her father had done the same, brought a bittersweet comfort. Commander walked perfectly at her side, attentive but relaxed. Several neighbors did double takes as they passed. "Emma? Is that—" Mrs. Hernandez, an elderly woman from 2 doors down, stopped them with wide eyes. "Yes, this is Commander," Emma confirmed. "I just got him back today." "Oh my," Mrs. Hernandez pressed a hand to her heart. "It's like seeing a ghost. He and your father were such a pair." She bent slightly, offering her hand for Commander to sniff. "Hello, old friend. Welcome home." Commander accepted the greeting with dignified grace, and something in Emma's chest loosened slightly. This was right. Whatever came next, bringing Commander home was right. Back at the house, Emma settled on the couch with her laptop, while Commander took up his position on the dog bed in the study, the door left open so he could see her. She opened the folder she'd labeled simply Case and began her nightly ritual of reviewing everything she knew about the warehouse raid. The facts were these. On January 12th, the Denver Police Department had received a tip about a major shipment arriving at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The tipster had mentioned Diego Alvarez specifically, a high-value target they'd been trying to catch for months. A team was assembled quickly, with her father and Commander taking point because of their drug detection expertise. The raid began at 11:42 p.m. Initial entry went according to plan. The team split up to cover the large warehouse, with her father and Commander taking the north section. At 11:57 p.m., shots were reported. By the time the rest of the team reached them at 12:03 a.m., both her father and Alvarez were dead. Commander was found severely wounded beside her father, having apparently tried to take down Alvarez after the shooting. The ballistics report confirmed that the bullet that killed her father came from Alvarez's gun. Case closed, except for the inconsistencies that kept Emma awake at night. The fact that her father, an experienced officer, had somehow gotten isolated from backup. The missing 6 minutes between the shots and the team's arrival. The strange position of the bodies as described in the report. And most troubling, the whispers she'd heard about internal affairs looking into something related to the case before it was suddenly shut down. Emma sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. She'd been over this countless times and was no closer to answers. Setting the laptop aside, she went to check on Commander. He wasn't on the dog bed. A moment of panic seized her until she spotted him by her father's desk. He was sitting alertly, staring at the lowest drawer on the right side. When he sensed her presence, he turned to look at her, then back at the drawer, letting out a soft whine. "What is it, boy?" Emma approached, curious. The drawer in question was locked, one of several in the desk she hadn't been able to open after her father's death. She'd assumed they contained police files or other work-related items he wasn't supposed to bring home, and had respected his privacy. Commander whined again, more insistently, his nose nudging toward the drawer. "You want me to open it?" Emma knelt beside him, running her hand along the smooth wood of the desk. "I don't have the key. I looked everywhere after." Commander suddenly stood and walked to the bookshelf, nose pointed upward at a row of law enforcement textbooks her father had kept from his academy days. He rose on his hind legs, paws against the shelf, and nudged at a thick volume about criminal procedure. Emma watched, baffled, as the book tilted and then fell to the floor with a heavy thud. As it hit the ground, something small and metallic slid out from between its pages, a key. Her breath caught. "How did you—" Commander returned to the desk drawer, looking between it and the key with unmistakable purpose. With trembling fingers, Emma picked up the key. It fit perfectly into the lock of the drawer. Inside was a single item, a small, leather-bound notebook she'd never seen before. On the first page, in her father's neat handwriting, was written, "In case anything happens to me, the truth is here. Trust no one except Commander." Emma looked at the German Shepherd in astonishment. "He told you about this, didn't he?" He trained you to show someone this hiding place if something happened to him. Commander's steady gaze was all the confirmation she needed. Her hands shaking slightly, Emma turned to the next page and began to read. By the time she finished the first entry, she knew her suspicions had been right all along. Her father's death was no accident, and what had happened in that warehouse was far more complex and dangerous than anyone had admitted. "Looks like we've got work to do, Commander," she whispered, one hand resting on his solid back, drawing strength from his presence. "And it starts tomorrow." Emma barely slept that night. Her father's notebook lay open beside her on the bed as she pored over its contents, trying to make sense of the coded language and abbreviations he'd used. Detective Michael Matthews had been careful, writing in a way that would protect him and whoever found the notebook, should it fall into the wrong hands. But the message was clear enough. He had suspected corruption within the department. Several entries mentioned an officer he referred to only as K, who seemed to have connections with the Alvarez cartel. There were dates, locations, snippets of overheard conversations that her father had documented meticulously. And most damning of all, his final entry dated the morning of the raid. "Tip about Alvarez too convenient. K insisting I take point with C. Don't trust this setup, but need evidence. If correct, this goes higher than I thought. USB with recordings hidden in C's vest pocket. Trust no one." C was Commander, Emma was certain, and somewhere on his old K9 vest was a USB drive containing whatever evidence her father had gathered. Evidence that had likely gotten him killed. She glanced at the digital clock on her nightstand, 5:37 a.m. Commander lay on the floor beside her bed, having abandoned the study dog bed sometime during the night to stay close to her. His eyes were open, watching her with that same steady, intelligent gaze. "Morning, boy," she said softly. "I don't suppose you know where your old vest is." His ears perked up at the word vest, but he made no move to indicate he understood her question. Emma sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. The K9 unit would have had his equipment. After the shooting, everything would have been collected as evidence, then released once the case was closed. But where would it go? To department storage? Would they have destroyed it? Emma swung her legs over the side of the bed and reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for, Officer Tanya Wilson. Tanya had been her father's closest friend in the department, his partner before he joined the K9 unit. She'd been like an aunt to Emma growing up, though their contact had become strained after the shooting. Tanya had been one of many who urged Emma to move on, to stop asking questions. But if anyone would help her now, it would be Tanya. "Too early to call," Emma muttered, setting the phone down. She'd have to wait at least a few hours. In the meantime, she needed to figure out her next steps. If her father was right, if there was corruption in the department, then she needed to be extremely careful about how she proceeded. Commander followed her to the kitchen, where she made coffee and tried to organize her thoughts. The German Shepherd settled at her feet, a comforting presence in the quiet morning. "What am I getting myself into, boy?" she asked softly. By 8:30, Emma had showered, changed, and was ready to make her call. Commander sat attentively nearby as she dialed Tanya's number, his ears pricked forward as if he recognized what she was doing. "Emma?" Tanya's voice held surprise and a hint of wariness. "Everything okay?" "Hi, Tanya. Yes, everything's fine. I have some news. I found Commander." A long pause. "Commander? Mike's dog? Where?" "At an auction. For police dogs. I bought him yesterday." Another pause. "You what?" "Emma, those auctions are for departments and certified handlers. How did you even—" "That's not important right now," Emma cut in. "What matters is that I have him, and he's doing well. But I was wondering about his equipment. His vest, specifically. Would you know what happened to it?" The silence that followed was loaded with suspicion. "Why are you asking about his vest?" Emma thought quickly. "Sentimental reasons," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "I'd like to have it, as a memento of Dad's work with him." "Emma," Tanya's voice softened. "I understand, but it's been 6 months. We've all been worried about you, how you can't seem to let go. And now this, buying Commander, asking about equipment, it's not healthy." Emma bit back her frustration. "Please, Tanya, it would mean a lot to me." A sigh came through the line. "I'd have to check. After the investigation closed, that stuff probably went into storage. But Emma, promise me you're not still—" She trailed off. "Still what? Looking for the truth about what happened to my father?" "The truth is in the official report," Tanya said firmly. "Mike was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was tragic, but it happens in our line of work. He knew the risks." "Right," Emma said, not bothering to hide the bitterness in her voice. "Well, if you could check on the vest, I'd appreciate it. I'll see what I can do. But Emma, please." "Thanks, Tanya. I've got to go. Call me if you find anything." Emma hung up, her hand trembling slightly. Commander had moved closer during the conversation, his body leaning against her leg in silent support. "She's hiding something," Emma told him, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "She's always been a terrible liar. Dad used to tease her about it." The memory brought a sad smile to her face. Her father and Tanya had been close. There had even been a time when Emma suspected they might become more than friends. But that had never materialized. And now Emma wondered if Tanya's distance after his death had been grief, or something else. "We need that vest," she told Commander. "But I don't think Tanya's going to help us get it." She paced the kitchen, thinking. Then an idea struck her. Grabbing her phone again, she dialed another number. "Jason, it's Emma Matthews from the auction yesterday." "Emma, hey." The young auction worker sounded pleased to hear from her. "How's Commander settling in?" "Really well, actually. It's like he remembers this place." She paused. "Listen, I have a question. When Commander was surrendered to the auction, did he come with any of his equipment? His vest, specifically?" Let me think." Jason was quiet for a moment. "Most of the retired police dogs come with basic equipment, leash, collar, that sort of thing. I don't recall a vest, but I can check the surrender paperwork. Sometimes departments list everything that comes with a dog." "Would you? That would be amazing." "Sure thing. Give me an hour or so to dig through the files and I'll call you back." Emma thanked him and hung up, feeling a flicker of hope. She spent the next hour going through her father's notebook again, making notes of her own, trying to decipher who Kay might be. Her father had mentioned several officers by initial throughout his entries, making it difficult to narrow down. When her phone rang, she grabbed it eagerly. "Jason?" "Hey, Emma. I checked the paperwork. Commander was surrendered with a standard issue collar, leash, and muzzle, but no vest listed." "Sorry." Emma's heart sank. "Are you sure? Could it have been missed in the inventory?" "Possible, but unlikely. These transfers are pretty thorough, especially with high-value dogs like Commander." "Okay, thanks for checking." "No problem. Hey, how are you two doing, really? Commander's history is, well, it's intense. If you need any help with the transition, I know some great trainers who specialize in working with retired police dogs." "We're doing fine," Emma assured him, glancing at Commander, who was now sitting alert by the back door. "I think he's happy to be home." After hanging up, Emma let Commander out into the fenced backyard, watching as he made a careful perimeter check before taking care of his business. His methodical movements reminded her so much of her father, the same thoroughness, the same attention to detail. "What now, boy?" she asked when he came back inside. "The vest is our best lead, but if it wasn't surrendered with you..." Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Tanya. Checked storage. No vest on inventory list. Probably disposed of after investigation. Let this go, Emma, please. Emma frowned at the message. Something didn't add up. Why would they dispose of Commander's vest? Standard procedure would be to clean and store equipment for possible reuse, especially something as expensive as a K9 tactical vest, unless there was something on it they didn't want found. The USB drive her father had mentioned. Emma's mind raced. If the vest wasn't with Commander at the auction, and it wasn't in department storage, then where was it? Who would have had access to it after the shooting? She turned to Commander, who was watching her intently. "I need to see where it happened," she said softly. "The warehouse. Maybe there's something there. Some clue we're missing." Commander's ears pricked forward at the word warehouse. "You remember that place, don't you?" Emma knelt beside him, running her hands along his powerful shoulders. "I know it must be hard for you, but I need your help, Commander. We need to find out what happened to Dad." She grabbed her keys and Commander's leash. "Come on, boy. We're going for a drive." The warehouse district was on the industrial outskirts of Denver, a collection of large, nondescript buildings with minimal security. Emma drove slowly past the address she had memorized from the police report, assessing the situation. The warehouse in question appeared abandoned now, chain-link fence surrounding it, windows boarded up. She parked a block away and sat for a moment, gathering her courage. "Okay, Commander, let's go see what we can find." As she opened the car door, her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma hesitated, then answered. "Emma Matthews?" The male voice was unfamiliar. "Yes? Who's this?" "Someone who knew your father. Someone who knows you've got Commander now." A pause. "And someone who knows you're looking into things you shouldn't be." Emma's blood ran cold. "Who is this? How did you get my number?" "Listen carefully," the voice continued, ignoring her questions. "Your father stuck his nose where it didn't belong and it got him killed. You're headed down the same path." "Are you threatening me?" Emma demanded, anger overtaking her fear. "I'm warning you, for your own good. Go home. Forget about the warehouse. Forget about the vest. Forget about whatever you think you know, or you'll end up just like Detective Matthews." The call disconnected. Emma stared at her phone in shock, then looked at Commander, who sensed her distress and moved closer, his body alert. "They're watching us," she whispered, "right now." She scanned the surrounding area but saw nothing suspicious. No parked cars with occupants, no one loitering nearby. Yet someone knew exactly where she was and what she was doing. "Come on, Commander," she said, her voice shaking slightly as she clipped on his leash. "We need to get out of here, but we're not giving up. Not now." As they drove away, Emma glanced repeatedly in the rearview mirror, looking for signs of being followed. One thing was certain. Whoever had called her was connected to her father's death, and they were scared of what she might discover, which meant she was on the right track. Emma's hands trembled as she drove, her mind racing faster than the car. Someone was watching her. Someone knew she had Commander and was looking into her father's death. The mysterious caller had been clear about the threat. She was heading down the same path that had gotten her father killed. "We need a plan, Commander," she said, glancing at the German Shepherd in her rearview mirror. He sat alert in the back seat, his intelligent eyes meeting hers. Emma took a series of random turns, doubling back several times to ensure they weren't being followed. Only when she was certain they were alone did she pull into the parking lot of a small coffee shop on the other side of town. "We can't go home yet," she told Commander as she shut off the engine. "We need to think." Inside the coffee shop, she ordered a large coffee and found a table in the corner where she could keep an eye on her car with Commander inside. He was watching her through the window, his posture upright and attentive. Emma pulled out her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, dialed Jason's number again. "Emma?" He sounded surprised. "Twice in one day. Everything okay with Commander? Yes, he's fine. Listen, Jason, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Who surrendered Commander to the auction? There was a pause. Let me check the paperwork. It was the Denver PD's K9 unit. Standard procedure for retired police dogs without a handler to adopt them. Was there a specific officer who brought him in? Yes, there's a signature here, Officer K. Wilson. Emma nearly dropped her phone. K. Wilson, are you sure? Positive. Why do you know them? Yes, thank you, Jason. Emma hung up, her mind reeling. K. Wilson, Tanya Wilson, Officer K. The initial her father had used in his notebook. K. Could it possibly have been referring to Tanya, his own former partner, the woman who had been like family to them? Emma's coffee sat untouched as she processed this devastating possibility. If Tanya was involved, it would explain so much. How the killers knew where her father would be that night. Why the investigation was shut down so quickly. Why Tanya had been so insistent that Emma move on. And if Tanya had been the one to surrender Commander to the auction, she would have had access to his vest and the USB drive hidden in it. Emma needed more information, but she couldn't trust anyone in the department now. She thought of her father's words. Trust no one except Commander. Looking out at her car, she saw the German Shepherd still watching her, unwavering in his vigilance. An idea began to form. Back in the car, Emma turned to Commander. I need your help, boy. We're going to try something. She drove to a small park on the outskirts of the city, far from the warehouse district and her home. Once there, she led Commander to a secluded bench and sat down, taking a tennis ball from her pocket, one of several dog toys she'd purchased after the auction. Okay, Commander, let's see what Dad taught you. She held the ball up. Where's your vest? Where's the vest? Commander's ears perked forward, and his head tilted slightly. Vest, Emma repeated, trying different inflections. Find the vest. Commander whined softly but showed no sign of understanding the specific command she was looking for. Emma tried a different approach. USB, she said clearly. Find the USB. Again, no response that indicated recognition of the command. Frustrated but not defeated, Emma tried one more tactic. Dad, she said softly. Where's Dad? Find Dad. Commander's entire demeanor changed. He stood, alert and focused, and looked around the park with purpose. Then he turned back to Emma and whined, pushing his nose against her jacket where she kept her father's badge. You're looking for him, Emma whispered, tears springing to her eyes. I know, boy, I wish we could find him too. She wiped her eyes and thought for a moment. Her father had hidden evidence, prepared for the worst. He wouldn't have relied solely on Commander's vest for something so important. There had to be a backup. Home, she said suddenly. Commander, let's go home. The German Shepherd seemed to understand this command perfectly, turning immediately toward the car. As they drove back to the house, Emma kept a careful eye out for anyone who might be following them. The anonymous call had rattled her, but it had also confirmed her suspicions. There was a cover-up, and she was getting close enough to make someone nervous. At home, Emma led Commander back to her father's study. Okay, boy. If Dad hid something here, I need you to help me find it. Commander watched her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than a dog should. Emma tried to think like her father. If the USB in Commander's vest was Plan A, what would Plan B be? Safety, she murmured. Dad always had a backup plan. She looked at Commander. Safety. Find safety. Commander's ears pricked forward. He moved purposefully toward the bookshelf, the same one where he'd revealed the hidden key the night before. This time, he nosed at a different section, pushing at a thick criminal law textbook. Emma's heart raced as she pulled the book from the shelf. It was heavier than it should be, and when she opened it, She discovered why. The center had been hollowed out. Inside was a small fireproof box with a combination lock. "Good boy, Commander," she breathed, setting the box on the desk. "Now I just need to figure out the combination." She tried her father's badge number first. Nothing. Then his birthday, her birthday, the day he joined the force. None worked. "What would he use, Commander?" she asked, frustration building. What number would be meaningful but not obvious? Commander whined and nudged her hand with his nose, then looked pointedly at his collar. Emma frowned, then understanding dawned. She checked the tag on Commander's collar. There, beneath his name, was a 6-digit number, his K9 unit registration. "Worth a try," she murmured, dialing the numbers into the lock. With a satisfying click, the box opened. Inside was a sealed envelope and a small voice recorder. Emma's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope first. Inside was a handwritten letter from her father. "Emma, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I've been investigating corruption within the department. Officers working with the Alvarez cartel. What started as suspicion became certainty when I discovered financial records connecting several officers to offshore accounts tied to the cartel. The voice recorder contains conversations I managed to capture, and I've hidden a USB drive with digital evidence in Commander's vest. Trust him. I've trained him to protect this information and to lead you to this backup if necessary. Be careful who you trust. If I'm gone, they'll try to bury this. The corruption goes higher than I initially thought. I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but I know you'll do what's right. I love you, Emmy. Always have. Always will." Emma wiped tears from her eyes and picked up the voice recorder with shaking hands. She pressed play, and her father's voice filled the room. January 10th, meeting at the Blue Corner. Officers Wilson and Ramirez discussing delivery schedule with unknown mail. Reference made to the captain being unhappy with delays. Commander's ears perked up at the sound of her father's voice, a soft whine escaping him. The recording continued, documenting conversations, meetings, and observations. The final entry was dated January 12th, the day of the raid. "Wilson insisted I take point with Commander tonight. Says Alvarez will definitely be there. Something feels off about this whole setup. If my suspicions are correct, this is a trap. I've backed up everything on the USB in Commander's vest and left additional evidence in the safety box at home. If anything happens to me, Commander knows what to do." The recording ended. Emma sat in stunned silence, processing what she'd heard. Tanya Wilson wasn't just involved, she had set her father up. She had ensured he would be in that warehouse, alone with Commander, when whatever happened went down. A sudden noise from outside made both Emma and Commander tense. The German Shepherd moved to the window, his posture alert, a low growl building in his throat. Emma carefully approached the window and peered out through the blinds. A police cruiser was parked across the street, and leaning against it was Tanya Wilson herself, staring directly at the house. "She knows," Emma whispered to Commander. "She knows we found something." As if on cue, her phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. "We need to talk. I'm outside." Emma's mind raced. Should she confront Tanya with what she knew? Should she call for help? But who could she trust? Commander growled again, his eyes fixed on the figure outside. "You never liked her, did you?" Emma murmured, suddenly realizing the significance. Commander had always been friendly with her father's colleagues, except Tanya. Even as a child, Emma had noticed how the dog maintained a wary distance from her. Emma quickly gathered the letter, voice recorder, and her father's notebook, stuffing them into a backpack. Then she took a deep breath and texted back, "Not home. At the vet with Commander. We'll call you later." She watched through the blinds as Tanya read the message, her face tightening with suspicion. The officer looked up at the house again, then slowly got back into her cruiser. But she didn't drive away. She was waiting, watching. "We need to get out of here," Emma told Commander. But how? She thought quickly. The house had a back door that led to an alley behind the property. If they could reach her car without being seen... Come on, boy, she whispered, grabbing his leash and her backpack. We're going to have to be very quiet and very fast. Commander seemed to understand the urgency. He moved silently beside her as they made their way through the house, keeping low and away from windows. At the back door, Emma peered out cautiously. The alley was clear. Okay, Commander, let's go. Together they slipped out into the afternoon shadows, unaware that this was just the beginning of their dangerous journey toward the truth and justice for Michael Matthews. The alley behind Emma's house connected to a network of similar passages that ran between the rows of modest bungalows in the neighborhood. Emma kept Commander close, moving swiftly but quietly, staying in the shadows whenever possible. Her car was parked in front of the house, exactly where Tanya would be watching. They needed another plan. This way, she whispered to Commander, leading him toward the home of Mr. Guzman, an elderly neighbor who had been a friend of her father's. If anyone would help them without questions, it would be him. Emma knocked softly on Mr. Guzman's back door. After a moment, the curtain moved slightly, and then the door opened to reveal a man in his 70s, with kind eyes and a concerned expression. Emma, what are you? His eyes widened as he spotted Commander. Is that Mike's dog? Yes, Mr. Guzman, I need your help. Can we come in? He stepped aside immediately, ushering them into his kitchen. Of course, what's happening? You look frightened. Emma hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I'm in a bit of trouble. There's a police officer watching my house and I need to leave without being seen. Could I possibly borrow your car just for a day or two? I'll return it, I promise. Mr. Guzman studied her face, then looked at Commander, who was standing alert at Emma's side. This has to do with Mike's death, doesn't it? You found something. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The old man sighed. Your father was a good man, the best officer I ever knew. And I knew many in my 40 years as a court clerk. He reached for a set of keys hanging by the door. Take my car. It's in the garage. But Emma, be careful. If what happened to Mike was what I've always suspected, these are dangerous people. What do you mean, what you've always suspected? Emma asked, hope flaring that someone else had doubted the official story. I've seen corruption before, Mr. Guzman said quietly. The signs are always the same. How quickly they close the case, how they discourage questions. And Mike had been talking to me, you know, in the weeks before. He trailed off, shaking his head. He was worried, said things weren't right in the department. Emma felt a rush of validation. Mr. Guzman, would you be willing to tell me what he said? It could be important. Later, he said firmly, pressing the keys into her hand. First, you need to get somewhere safe. The car's nothing special, just an old Buick, but it runs well, and no one will be looking for it. Thank you, Emma said, impulsively hugging the older man. I'll call you when I can. Mr. Guzman nodded, then bent to pat Commander. You take care of her, hear me? Just like you took care of Mike. Commander's tail wagged slightly, the first time Emma had seen such a relaxed gesture from him. Minutes later, they were driving away in Mr. Guzman's aging Buick, having slipped out of his garage unseen. Emma drove carefully, taking a roundabout route to avoid passing her own house. In the rearview mirror, she could see Commander watching out the back window, as vigilant as she was. Where to now, she murmured, mostly to herself. She needed a safe place to go through the evidence, somewhere no one would think to look for her. After consideration, she pointed the car toward the mountains west of Denver. Her family had a small cabin there, nothing fancy, just a one-room structure her father had built years ago as a weekend getaway. Few people knew about it, and it was isolated enough to give her time to think. The drive took nearly 2 hours, winding up into the foothills on increasingly narrow roads. Commander remained alert throughout the journey, his ears pricking at every passing car, his gaze scanning their surroundings continuously. "Almost there, boy," Emma assured him as they turned onto the unmarked dirt track that led to the cabin. The last quarter mile was rough going, the old Buick bouncing over ruts and rocks, but finally the small wooden structure came into view. Emma parked and sat for a moment, listening to the profound silence of the mountains. Then she turned to Commander. "Ready to check it out?" The German Shepherd was already at attention, waiting for her to open the door. Together, they approached the cabin cautiously. It had been months since anyone had been here, but the place appeared undisturbed. Emma retrieved the key from its hiding place under a false rock and unlocked the door. The cabin was exactly as she remembered, rustic and simple, with a main room containing a small kitchen area, a wood stove, a couch that converted to a bed, and a table with 2 chairs. A basic bathroom was tucked into one corner. The air was stale but clean. "Home sweet home, at least for now," Emma told Commander, setting down her backpack and opening the windows to let in fresh air. The German Shepherd immediately began a methodical inspection of the space, sniffing every corner, checking behind the furniture. Once Commander seemed satisfied with his assessment, Emma unpacked the evidence they'd brought: her father's notebook, the letter from the safe, and the voice recorder. She spread everything on the table and took a deep breath. "Okay, Dad," she whispered. "Help me figure this out." For the next several hours, Emma immersed herself in the materials, taking notes, making connections, trying to piece together the full picture of what her father had uncovered. Commander stayed close, sometimes watching her work, sometimes gazing out the window, always alert. The story that emerged was disturbing. Her father had first become suspicious when he noticed discrepancies in evidence handling for several drug busts. Small amounts of seized narcotics would go missing before making it to the evidence room. Then he'd overheard conversations that suggested certain officers were being paid to look the other way during Alvarez cartel operations. Tanya Wilson's name appeared repeatedly, as did Officer Ramirez, and references to someone called the Captain, who Emma suspected might be Captain Harris, the head of the narcotics division. Her father had been meticulously gathering evidence, recording conversations, documenting unusual financial activities. And then came the warehouse raid, the operation that had been Tanya's idea, according to the recordings. She had insisted that Michael and Commander take point, separating them from the rest of the team. But the recordings didn't reveal what had actually happened inside the warehouse. That part of the story was still missing. "The USB," Emma murmured, frustrated. "We need what's on that USB, Commander." The German Shepherd's ears pricked up at her words, and he moved closer, resting his head on her knee. Emma scratched behind his ears, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I wonder..." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found what she was looking for. Dr. Lena Patel, the veterinarian who had treated Commander after the shooting. Would she remember anything about his vest? Emma wondered aloud. It's worth a try. She pressed call, but the phone showed no signal. Of course, the cabin was too remote for reliable cell service. Another limitation, but perhaps also a protection. No one could track her phone if it had no signal. As the evening deepened into night, Emma heated up some canned soup she'd found in the cupboard, sharing a portion with Commander. The mundane activity felt strangely normal, a moment of calm in what had become a dangerous pursuit of truth. After eating, Emma stepped outside onto the small porch, Commander following close behind. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead in the mountain darkness. She breathed in the pine-scented air, trying to clear her head. "What do we do next, boy?" she asked softly. "The evidence we have is compelling, but it's not enough to prove who actually killed Dad. We need that USB, or we need someone who was there that night to talk." Commander stiffened suddenly, his ears forward, body alert. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "What is it?" Emma whispered, instantly on guard. She strained to hear what had caught the dog's attention. At first, there was nothing but the rustle of wind through the pines. Then she heard it, the distant sound of a vehicle, engine struggling on the rough terrain. "Someone's coming," she breathed, panic rising. How could they have found us? The headlights weren't visible yet, but the sound was growing closer. Emma made a split-second decision. Grabbing her backpack with the evidence, she whispered to Commander, "Come on, we need to hide." They slipped back inside the cabin, where Emma quickly gathered her few belongings. The cabin had no back door, but her father had built a hidden trapdoor under the braided rug, leading to a small root cellar beneath the structure, a place to store supplies and, if necessary, a hiding spot. Emma pulled back the rug and opened the trapdoor. "Down, Commander," she whispered, pointing to the dark opening. The German Shepherd hesitated, looking from the trapdoor to the cabin's front door as if assessing the threat and their options. "Please, boy, we need to hide." After another moment's consideration, Commander descended the narrow steps into the darkness below. Emma followed, pulling the trapdoor closed above them just as the sound of the approaching vehicle became unmistakable. In the pitch-black cellar, Emma fumbled for the flashlight she knew was kept on a shelf near the stairs. Finding it, she clicked it on, keeping the beam pointed downward to minimize any light that might seep through the floorboards above. The root cellar was small, with rough stone walls and a dirt floor. Shelves lined one wall, holding canned goods and emergency supplies. Emma and Commander crouched in the farthest corner, listening intently as the vehicle pulled up outside the cabin. Car doors slammed, voices, footsteps on the porch. Commander pressed against Emma's side, his body tense but steady. She wrapped an arm around him, drawing strength from his courage. "It's okay," she whispered, so softly it was barely audible. "We're in this together." Above them, the cabin door crashed open with a splintering sound that told Emma whoever had come wasn't bothering with keys or courtesy. They had found her hideaway, and they were coming in with force. The hunt was on. Emma held her breath as heavy footsteps moved across the floorboards above. Commander remained absolutely still beside her, his training evident in his perfect silence, despite the tension radiating from his powerful body. "Check everything," a male voice ordered. "She has to be here somewhere." The old man said she was heading to a family cabin. Emma's heart sank. Mr. Guzman. They must have gotten to him somehow after she left. She prayed he was all right. "Place looks recently used," another voice reported. "Coffee cup on the counter, still warm. Laptop's here. Some papers." Emma clutched her backpack tighter, grateful she'd had the presence of mind to gather the crucial evidence before hiding. But she'd left her laptop, which contained copies of some of the files. Not everything, but enough to confirm she was pursuing her father's investigation. The footsteps continued overhead, moving methodically through the small cabin. Drawers opened and closed. Furniture scraped against the floor. "Check for hidden spaces," the first voice commanded. "These old cabins often have cellars or crawl spaces." Emma's blood ran cold. It was only a matter of time before they found the trapdoor. She glanced around the cramped cellar, looking for options. There was a small ventilation opening near the ceiling on the far wall, but it was much too small for a person to fit through. Perhaps Commander could escape that way, but she wouldn't leave him, and she doubted he would leave her. The footsteps stopped directly above the trapdoor. Emma extinguished the flashlight and pressed herself against the cold stone wall, Commander a warm, solid presence against her side. "What's with the rug? Looks moved." Emma closed her eyes, heart hammering so loudly she was certain they must hear it through the floorboards. Then, unexpectedly, a phone rang above them. "Harris." The first voice answered curtly. A pause. "Yes, sir." We found evidence she's been here, but no sign of her or the dog yet. Another pause. Understood. We'll continue the search in the surrounding area. She can't have gone far on foot. Footsteps moved away from the trap door, toward the cabin door. Let's check the perimeter, the voice ordered. They might be hiding in the woods. The cabin door closed, and the footsteps receded. Emma remained frozen, afraid to move, afraid to hope. "Captain Harris," she whispered to Commander. "The captain from Dad's notes, he's involved." Commander's ears twitched at the name, a barely audible growl rumbling in his chest. They waited in tense silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Occasionally they heard voices or footsteps outside as the men searched the area around the cabin. Emma strained to hear their movements, trying to judge how many officers were present and what their search pattern might be. Finally, the sounds of the search moved farther away, and Emma dared to switch her flashlight back on, keeping the beam pointed downward. She needed to think fast. The searchers would eventually return to the cabin, and next time, they might not overlook the trap door. "We need a distraction," she whispered to Commander. The German Shepherd watched her attentively, as if understanding every word. "And then we need to get out of here." Emma's gaze fell on her father's old hunting jacket hanging on a hook by the cellar steps. Inside one pocket she found what she was hoping for, an emergency flare. Her father had always been prepared. "This might work," she murmured, formulating a plan. If she could create a distraction far enough from the cabin, they might have a chance to escape in the opposite direction. Emma listened carefully. The voices seemed to be concentrated to the north of the cabin, toward the dirt road. If she could create a distraction to the east, they might be able to slip away to the west, where there was a hiking trail that led down to a small lake about 2 miles away. From there, they could follow the lakeshore to a public campground where they might find help or transportation. The question was, how to deploy the flare without being seen. She looked at Commander thoughtfully. "I don't suppose Dad trained you to carry objects to specific locations?" Commander's ears perked up, his head tilting slightly as if considering her question. "Worth a try," Emma said. She knelt beside the German Shepherd and held out the flare. "Commander, take." To her surprise, Commander gently took the flare in his mouth, holding it carefully between his teeth. "Good boy," she whispered, excitement building. "Now, how do I tell you where to go?" She thought for a moment, then reached into her backpack and pulled out her father's notebook. She quickly sketched a crude map of the cabin and surrounding area, then pointed to a spot to the east. "Commander, drop here," she said, tapping the spot on the map. The German Shepherd studied the map with an intensity that would have seemed almost comical in any other situation. Then, to Emma's amazement, he looked from the map to her face and gave a single subtle nod. "You understand," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "Dad trained you for this kind of thing, didn't he?" Commander's eyes seemed to hold a depth of intelligence that confirmed her suspicion. Michael Matthews had prepared his K-9 partner for covert operations, perhaps anticipating a situation exactly like this one. "Okay," Emma said, formulating the rest of her plan. "When you drop the flare, I need you to activate it by pulling this string with your teeth, then come straight back here. Can you do that?" Commander's unwavering gaze was answer enough. Emma carefully climbed the steps to the trap door and listened. Hearing nothing immediately outside, she slowly lifted the door just enough for Commander to slip through. "Be careful," she whispered as the German Shepherd silently emerged into the cabin, flare still held securely in his mouth. "Come right back." She closed the trap door and returned to the bottom of the steps, heart pounding as she waited. Through the floorboards, she heard the subtle click of the cabin door opening and closing. Commander was on his mission. The minutes that followed were some of the longest of Emma's life. She strained to hear any sound that might indicate Commander had been spotted or that her plan had gone awry. The silence was agonizing. Then in the distance she heard shouts of surprise and alarm. A bright light flashed through the cracks in the floorboards. The flare had been activated. Footsteps pounded past the cabin as the searchers raced toward the unexpected signal. Emma tensed, waiting for Commander's return. Had he made it back to the cabin, or had he been spotted? The trapdoor lifted suddenly, causing her to jump. Commander's head appeared in the opening, his eyes finding hers in the darkness. "Good boy," Emma whispered fervently, relief flooding through her. "The best boy." She quickly gathered her backpack and the few supplies she could find in the cellar, a small first aid kit, a canteen of water, some emergency ration bars. Then she followed Commander up into the cabin. Outside, she could see the bright glow of the flare illuminating the trees to the east. All attention seemed focused in that direction, giving them a clear path to the west. "Let's go," she whispered to Commander, crouching low as they slipped out the cabin door and into the cover of the pines. The night was dark, but a quarter moon provided just enough light to navigate by. Commander took the lead, moving with silent efficiency through the underbrush, pausing occasionally to ensure Emma was keeping up. They had gone perhaps half a mile when they heard shouts of anger behind them. Their absence had been discovered. "Run," Emma urged, and they abandoned stealth for speed, racing through the forest as fast as the rough terrain would allow. Commander stayed close, adjusting his pace to match hers, occasionally guiding her around obstacles she couldn't see in the darkness. The sounds of pursuit grew behind them, crashing footsteps, barked orders, the beams of powerful flashlights cutting through the trees. Emma's lungs burned and her legs ached, but fear pushed her forward. They couldn't be caught now, not when they were so close to uncovering the truth. They reached the hiking trail Emma had remembered, its packed dirt surface allowing for faster movement. Commander led the way with confidence, as if he knew exactly where they were heading. "The lake," Emma gasped between breaths. "We need to reach the lake." The pursuit seemed to be falling behind, their pursuers likely slowed by unfamiliarity with the terrain. Emma allowed herself a flicker of hope. If they could reach the campground, find help, or a phone. They rounded a bend in the trail, and suddenly the trees opened up to reveal the small mountain lake, its surface silver in the moonlight. Emma paused, catching her breath, relief washing over her. They'd made it. But Commander wasn't relaxing. His posture was rigid, his attention fixed on something across the water. Emma followed his gaze and felt her hope crumble. On the far shore, where the campground should offer safety, multiple flashlight beams moved in a coordinated pattern. They'd been outmaneuvered. Captain Harris and his men had anticipated their escape route. "They've cut us off," Emma whispered, despair threatening to overwhelm her. "What do we do now?" Commander nudged her hand with his nose, then turned to look back the way they had come. The sounds of pursuit were growing closer again. They were trapped between two groups of pursuers, with the lake on one side and steep rocky terrain on the other. Their options were running out. Emma knelt beside Commander, wrapping her arms around his powerful neck. "I'm sorry I got you into this," she whispered against his fur. "I just wanted justice for Dad." Commander pulled back slightly, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intensity that somehow conveyed both determination and reassurance. He wasn't giving up, and he wouldn't let her give up either. Emma took a deep breath, pushing back her fear and exhaustion. "You're right," she said, finding strength in his unwavering loyalty. "Dad wouldn't give up, and neither will we." She looked around, assessing their limited options. "We need to hide until daylight. Then we'll figure out our next move." Commander's gaze shifted to a rocky outcropping that rose above the lakeshore. Emma nodded in understanding. The terrain was difficult, but it might provide shelter and a defensible position. "Lead the way," she told him, and together they turned away from both the lake and the trail, disappearing into the shadows as the net of their pursuers drew ever tighter around them. The rocky outcropping proved to be more than just a hiding place. As Commander led Emma up the difficult terrain, they discovered a narrow opening partially hidden by scrub brush, the entrance to a small cave. Emma had to crouch to enter, but once inside, the space opened up enough for her to sit comfortably. Commander fit easily, his dark coat blending with the shadows. "Good find, boy," Emma whispered, switching on her flashlight briefly to examine their shelter. The cave extended back about 15 feet, the ceiling too low to stand up straight but high enough to sit without hunching. It was dry and, most importantly, hidden from view of anyone on the trail or lakeshore. Emma turned off the flashlight to conserve its battery and settled against the cool stone wall. Commander positioned himself near the entrance, his body alert, ears constantly moving as he monitored the sounds outside. Through the narrow opening, Emma could see flashlight beams sweeping across the trees below as their pursuers continued the search. "They're not giving up," she murmured. "Which means whatever Dad discovered must be incredibly damaging." Commander shifted slightly, moving closer to her side. Emma stroked his fur, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I just wish I knew exactly what was on that USB drive. The recordings and notes we have point to corruption, but there must be something more specific. Something that identifies who actually pulled the trigger." The night wore on, the sounds of the search gradually becoming more distant as the teams moved to other areas. Emma dozed fitfully, exhaustion finally claiming her despite the danger. Commander remained vigilant, waking her with a gentle nudge whenever the searchers came too close to their hiding place. As dawn approached, Emma checked her phone again. Still no signal. She had saved as much battery as possible, knowing they might need it later. The search parties had seemed to withdraw about an hour earlier, but Emma wasn't naive enough to think they had given up. More likely they were regrouping, perhaps waiting for daylight to continue more effectively. "We need a plan," she told Commander, keeping her voice low. "We can't stay here forever, and we can't go back the way we came." Commander's ears perked up suddenly, his attention fixed on something outside the cave. Emma tensed, afraid the searchers had returned, but the German shepherd's body language wasn't alarmed, just alert and interested. Cautiously, Emma crept to the cave entrance and peered out. The forest was lightening with pre-dawn glow, enough to make out shapes but not details. At first she saw nothing unusual, but then a movement caught her eye, a figure moving through the trees below, alone and on foot. It wasn't one of the police officers who had been searching for them. This person moved differently, more cautiously, and seemed to be deliberately avoiding the paths the search parties had used. Emma couldn't make out a face, but something about the figure's movements seemed familiar. Commander made a soft sound, not quite a whine, but close, his tail swishing once against the cave floor. "You know who that is?" Emma whispered. As if in answer, Commander edged forward, his body language changing from vigilant observation to cautious interest. Emma held him back gently. "Wait, let's be sure." The figure continued moving through the trees, gradually getting closer to their position, though it wasn't clear if the person was heading specifically toward the cave or just happened to be moving in that direction. Emma strained to see details in the dim light. Then the figure paused and looked up directly toward their hiding place. A shaft of early morning light illuminated the face, and Emma gasped. "Jason, from the auction?" It was indeed the young auction worker who had helped her with Commander. He stood still now, scanning the hillside as if searching for something, or someone. "How did he find us?" Emma whispered to Commander. "And why is he here?" Commander's reaction remained neutral, alert but not alarmed or aggressive. That, more than anything, convinced Emma to take a chance. "Stay here," she told Commander, though she suspected he would follow regardless. She emerged from the cave cautiously, staying low and using the rocks for cover. "Jason," she called softly. The young man's head snapped up, his eyes widening as he spotted her. He quickly moved toward the hillside, climbing with the sureness of someone familiar with the terrain. "Emma," he responded, keeping his voice down. "Thank God I found you." "How did you know where to look?" Emma demanded as he reached her position. "And why are you here?" "I followed you," Jason admitted. "After I helped you with the information about Commander's surrender paperwork, I got curious. Something didn't add up. Then when I was leaving work, I saw a police cruiser parked near your house. The officer inside was watching the place like a hawk." "Officer Wilson," Emma guessed. Jason nodded. "I recognized her from department events at the auction house. I drove past, didn't stop, but it made me worried. So I circled back and parked down the street. That's when I saw you and Commander sneaking out the back. You've been following me since yesterday afternoon?" Emma was stunned. "All the way here?" "Not exactly. I lost you after you left the city. But then I remembered something. Your dad mentioned this cabin once when he was picking up a retired K-9 from us last year. Said it was his favorite place to get away and think. When I couldn't find you in town, I took a chance." Commander had emerged from the cave and was now sniffing Jason thoroughly, circling him with careful attention. "He seems to trust you," Emma observed, still wary. "I worked with a lot of K-9s at the auction house," Jason explained, "including Commander when he was surrendered. We had a couple of weeks to get to know each other before you showed up." Emma studied Jason's face, looking for any sign of deception. "Why help me? You could get in serious trouble." Jason's expression turned serious. "Your dad was a good man, Emma. Everyone in the K-9 community respected him. When Commander was surrendered to us, something felt off. He was in perfect health except for the healing wound, his training scores were impeccable, and yet suddenly he was unsuitable for service. It didn't make sense." "It was a cover-up," Emma said. "They needed to get rid of him because he was a witness. I figured it was something like that." Jason glanced around nervously. "Look, we shouldn't stay here. They've been searching all night. They pulled back about an hour ago, but I heard on my police scanner they're bringing in a helicopter at dawn." Emma's heart sank. "A helicopter? We'll never evade that." "That's why I'm here. I can help you get out." Jason pointed toward the lake. "I have a friend who works at the ranger station on the North Shore. He has a boat. We can cross the lake and get to my truck. I parked it about 5 miles from here, well away from where the police are concentrating their search." Emma hesitated, her father's warning echoing in her mind. Trust no one except Commander. But Commander seemed at ease with Jason, and they were running out of options. "Why would you risk helping us?" she asked, needing to be sure. Jason's expression softened. "Because my dad was a cop too. He died in the line of duty when I was 16. If someone had covered up what happened to him..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Let's just say I understand what you're doing." Emma looked at Commander, seeking his assessment. The German Shepherd had completed his inspection of Jason and now stood calmly, watching them both with those intelligent eyes. "Okay," Emma decided. "We'll go with you. But Commander stays with me at all times." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Jason assured her. "He's the key to all this, isn't he?" Emma nodded, patting the backpack containing her father's evidence. "Him and what's in here. Now how do we get to this boat without being seen?" Jason grinned, pulling a small radio from his pocket. "With this, I've been monitoring their communications. Right now they're regrouping at the cabin and the campground. If we move quickly, we can reach the North Shore before they organize the next search phase." As if to emphasize the urgency, a distant mechanical thumping sound reached them, the helicopter approaching from the east. "Let's go," Emma said, slinging her backpack over her shoulders. "Lead the way." They descended the rocky hillside as quickly as safety allowed, Commander moving with agile grace beside them. Once on level ground, Jason led them on a route that skirted the lakeshore while staying under the cover of trees. The helicopter's sound grew louder, its rhythmic beating sending birds scattering from the treetops. Emma, Jason, and Commander pressed closer to the ground, using every bit of natural cover available. Just a little farther, Jason encouraged as they made their way around a rocky point. "The ranger station is just ahead." They reached a small cove where a wooden dock extended into the water. Tied to it was a small motorboat, and standing beside it was a tall, bearded man in a ranger uniform. "That's Cal," Jason explained. "He's good people. I've known him since high school." Cal spotted them and waved urgently, gesturing for them to hurry. The helicopter was now visible above the trees on the far side of the lake, its searchlight sweeping the shoreline methodically. "Run!" Jason urged, and they abandoned caution for speed, sprinting the final 100 yards to the dock. "Hurry," Cal said as they approached. "They've got spotters on the eastern ridge with binoculars. Once that chopper clears the point, they'll have a direct line of sight to this cove." Emma clambered into the boat, Commander jumping in smoothly after her. Jason followed while Cal quickly untied the lines. "Get down," Cal instructed, pointing to a tarp in the bottom of the boat. "Both of you, and the dog too. I'll cover you." Emma and Jason crouched low, pulling the tarp over themselves and Commander. Cal started the motor and guided the boat out of the cove, moving at a casual pace that wouldn't attract attention. Through a small gap in the tarp, Emma could see the helicopter hovering over the opposite shore. Her heart pounded in her chest, and beside her, Commander pressed close, a steady, reassuring presence. "Almost there," Jason whispered as the boat turned north, away from the search area. For the first time since discovering her father's notebook, Emma felt a flicker of hope. They had the evidence. They had Commander. And now, they had help. Maybe, just maybe, they could find justice for Michael Matthews after all. The boat cut smoothly across the lake, Cal maintaining a steady, unhurried pace that wouldn't attract attention. Emma, Jason, and Commander remained hidden beneath the tarp, the tension in Emma's body slowly easing as the sound of the helicopter faded into the distance. "We're clear," Cal announced finally. "You can come out now." Emma pushed the tarp aside and sat up, blinking in the morning sunlight. They had crossed to the far side of the lake and were approaching a small, secluded cove hidden from the main shoreline by a jutting peninsula. "Thank you," she said to Cal as he guided the boat toward a dilapidated wooden dock. "You're taking a huge risk helping us." The ranger shrugged, his weathered face creasing into a brief smile. "Jason said it was important. That's good enough for me." As the boat bumped gently against the dock, Cal tied it securely and helped them disembark. Commander leapt gracefully onto the wooden planks, immediately alert and scanning their surroundings. "My truck's about a half-mile through these woods," Jason explained, pointing to a narrow trail that led away from the shore. "We should be able to reach it without being spotted." "What about you?" Emma asked Cal, who was already preparing to return to his station. "Won't they realize you helped us?" "Don't worry about me," Cal replied. "As far as anyone knows, I took the boat out for a routine patrol. I'll report seeing nothing unusual." Emma impulsively hugged the ranger. "Thank you. My father would have appreciated this." "Mike Matthews was good people," Cal said simply. "This is the least I can do." They parted ways, Cal returning across the lake while Emma, Jason, and Commander set off through the woods. The morning was warming up, sunlight filtering through the pine branches above them. Under different circumstances, it might have been a pleasant hike. "So what's the plan once we reach your truck?" Emma asked as they walked. "We can't go back to my place, and your place might not be safe either if they connect you to me." Jason nodded. "I've been thinking about that. I have a friend who owns a cabin about 3 hours north of here, near the Wyoming border. He's out of the country for the next month, but I have the key. We should be safe there while we figure out our next move." "And what exactly is our next move?" Emma pressed. "I have evidence of corruption, but without the USB drive my father hid, it might not be enough to prove who actually killed him." "We need to find that vest," Jason agreed. "But first, we need to understand exactly what's on the evidence you do have. Maybe there are clues we've missed." They walked in silence for a while, each lost in thought. Commander remained close to Emma's side, occasionally ranging ahead to check the trail, but always returning promptly. "Here we are," Jason announced as they emerged into a small clearing where an older model pickup truck was parked, partially concealed by branches. "Not the most comfortable ride, but it'll get us where we need to go." Emma helped Commander into the back seat, then climbed in herself while Jason cleared the branches from around the vehicle. Soon they were bouncing down a rutted forest road, gradually making their way toward the main highway. "I need to call Mr. Guzman," Emma said once they reached cell service. "They must have pressured him to reveal where I was going. I want to make sure he's okay." "Use my phone," Jason offered, passing her his cell. "They might be monitoring yours." Emma dialed her neighbor's number, anxiety building as it rang several times. Finally, a gruff voice answered. "Hello? Mr. Guzman, it's Emma. Are you all right?" There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "Emma, thank God. Yes, I'm fine. They came shortly after you left. Police officers saying they needed to speak with you urgently. When I said you'd borrowed my car, they made it clear it would be better for everyone if I told them where you might have gone." "I'm so sorry they put you in that position," Emma said, guilt washing over her. "Don't you apologize," Mr. Guzman replied firmly. "I've been around long enough to recognize abuse of power when I see it, but Emma, be careful. These people are dangerous." "I will. And Mr. Guzman, your car is safe. I'll make sure it gets back to you somehow." After saying goodbye, Emma handed the phone back to Jason. "He's okay, but they definitely intimidated him. This goes beyond just a few corrupt officers. This is systematic." Jason nodded grimly. "All the more reason to get somewhere safe where we can go through everything properly." They drove for several hours, taking back roads when possible to avoid main highways where police might be watching. Emma used the time to go through her father's notebook again, looking for anything that might point to the location of Commander's missing vest. "It's frustrating," she told Jason as they crossed the state line into Wyoming. "Dad mentions the USB in the vest several times, but never indicates what he did with the vest after the shooting." "Let's think about this logically," Jason suggested. "After your father was killed, Commander was injured and taken to a veterinary hospital, right?" Emma nodded. "Dr. Patel's clinic. She's our regular vet, has been for years." "And the vest would have been removed at that point," Jason continued, "either at the scene or at the clinic." "I tried calling Dr. Patel yesterday, but I didn't get through," Emma recalled. "She might know something about the vest." "It's worth a try," Jason agreed. "But let's wait until we reach the cabin. It'll be safer to make calls from there." The cabin Jason had mentioned turned out to be a modern, well-maintained structure nestled in a grove of aspen trees, far more comfortable than Emma had expected. Solar panels on the roof provided electricity, and a satellite dish offered both internet and phone service. "Your friend must do well for himself," Emma remarked as they pulled up to the building. "Tech industry," Jason explained. "He uses this place to disconnect, ironically enough." Once inside, Emma set up her evidence on the dining table while Jason checked the cabin's security system and made sure all the blinds were closed. Commander explored the new environment thoroughly, inspecting each room before settling near Emma, ever watchful. "Okay," Jason said, joining Emma at the table. "Let's call your vet." Emma dialed Dr. Patel's number, hoping the veterinarian would be at the clinic on a weekend. To her relief, the familiar voice answered after just a few rings. "Dr. Patel, it's Emma Matthews." "Emma." The vet sounded genuinely pleased to hear from her. "I was just thinking about you. One of my technicians saw the news about a police search in the mountains and mentioned your name. Is everything all right?" Emma hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Not exactly. Dr. Patel, I need to ask you something important. When Commander was brought to you after my father was killed, do you remember what happened to his tactical vest?" There was a pause on the line. When Dr. Patel spoke again, her voice was lower, more cautious. "Emma, are you in trouble?" "I'm trying to find out what really happened to my father," Emma replied honestly. "The vest might contain evidence." Another pause, longer this time. "The vest came in with Commander," Dr. Patel finally said. "It was bloody and I removed it so I could examine his wound properly. Officer Wilson, you know, your father's old partner, she said she needed to take it as evidence." Emma's heart sank. "So Tanya has it." "Not exactly," Dr. Patel continued, her voice dropping even further. "Before she arrived, I noticed something unusual. There was a small tear in one of the pouches, and inside was what looked like a USB drive. Given the circumstances, I don't know, something felt wrong about the whole situation, so I removed it before she arrived." Emma gasped, hope surging through her. "You have the USB?" "I do," the vet confirmed. "I've kept it safe, waiting for the right time. I think perhaps that time is now." "Dr. Patel, you have no idea how important this is," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "Can I come get it from you?" "That wouldn't be wise," the vet replied. "The clinic might be watched. 2 officers came by yesterday asking if I'd heard from you. They didn't say why they were looking for you, but they seemed insistent." Emma exchanged a worried glance with Jason. "What do you suggest?" "I have a conference in Cheyenne tomorrow," Dr. Patel said. "I'll be staying at the Westview Hotel, room 312. I can leave the USB for you there." "That would be perfect," Emma agreed, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Dr. Patel, for everything. Your father was a good man, Emma, and Commander was his heart. Take care of him and yourself." After hanging up, Emma turned to Jason, excitement bubbling through her anxiety. "We found it. The USB is with Dr. Patel. We just need to pick it up tomorrow in Cheyenne." Jason smiled, sharing her enthusiasm, but his eyes remained serious. "That's great news, but we need to be extremely careful. If they're watching Dr. Patel, they might anticipate this move." Emma nodded, sobering. "You're right. We need a plan." She looked at Commander, who sat attentively beside her. "And I think I might have one. But it's going to depend on how well Dad trained Commander for undercover work." Commander's ears perked up, as if he understood the significance of her words. In his intelligent eyes, Emma saw not just loyalty and courage, but a readiness to complete the mission his handler had entrusted to him. Tomorrow they would make their move, and with the USB, they would finally have the evidence needed to bring her father's killers to justice. But as night fell over the Wyoming cabin, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time and that their enemies were closing in. The drive to Cheyenne took just over an hour from their remote cabin hideaway. Emma had barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and contingencies. By morning, she had formulated a plan that she hoped would allow them to retrieve the USB drive without putting Dr. Patel or themselves at unnecessary risk. "Are you sure about this?" Jason asked, as he pulled into a shopping center parking lot about a mile from the Westview Hotel. "It's risky." "Every option is risky at this point," Emma replied, checking her watch. It was just past 9 a.m. "But this way, if they are watching Dr. Patel, they'll be focused on her in the hotel, not on us." Their plan was straightforward but depended on perfect timing. Dr. Patel had agreed to leave the USB drive taped under a bench in a small park adjacent to the hotel before heading to her conference. Emma would send Commander to retrieve it, relying on the German Shepherd's training and intelligence to complete the mission without drawing attention. "Are you sure Commander can do this?" Jason looked skeptical. Emma glanced at the German Shepherd sitting alertly in the back seat. "My father trained him for covert evidence retrieval. Last night I found a command sequence in Dad's notebook that should activate that training. We practiced a bit at the cabin and he seemed to remember." In truth, Emma was amazed at the depth of training her father had instilled in Commander. When she had given him the specific command phrases from the notebook, "Shadow Run," followed by "Secure and Return," the German Shepherd's entire demeanor had changed. He'd become intensely focused, moving with a stealth and purpose that spoke of countless hours of specialized training. "I'll drive you closer, then circle the block," Jason said, putting the truck in gear. "If anything looks suspicious, we abort immediately." They approached the park, driving slowly past to assess the situation. The small green space was relatively quiet, with just a few morning joggers and a woman walking a small dog. The bench Dr. Patel had described was visible from the street, wooden beneath a large oak tree with a distinctive carving on one arm. "Looks clear," Emma said, her heart racing despite the calm in her voice. "This is as good as it's going to get." Jason pulled over about 50 yards from the park entrance. Emma turned to Commander, who was already watching her with intense focus, as if he sensed the importance of the moment. "Shadow Run," she said quietly but firmly. "Secure and return." Commander's ears pricked forward, his body tensing with purpose. Emma attached a small, inconspicuous pouch to his collar, something that would hold the USB drive securely once he retrieved it. "Be careful, boy," she whispered, opening the door just enough for the German Shepherd to slip out. Commander exited the vehicle with fluid grace, immediately adopting a casual gait that wouldn't attract attention. To a casual observer, he might have appeared to be a local dog out for a morning walk, perhaps having slipped away from his owner momentarily. He moved with such natural confidence that few would question his presence. Emma and Jason watched anxiously as Commander entered the park, maintaining his relaxed demeanor while subtly working his way toward the designated bench. A jogger passed by him without a second glance. The woman with the small dog looked up briefly, but her pet seemed uninterested in the German Shepherd, who gave them a wide berth. "He's good," Jason murmured, impressed. "Really good." Emma felt a surge of pride mixed with grief. Her father had created something extraordinary in his partnership with Commander, a bond built on trust, intelligence, and shared purpose. She only wished she could have witnessed them working together at their peak. Commander reached the bench and casually circled it, as if simply exploring. When no one was looking directly at him, he smoothly ducked underneath, his movement so quick and natural that Emma almost missed it. Seconds later, he emerged and continued his leisurely exploration of the park. "Did he get it?" Jason asked, straining to see. "I think so," Emma replied, her hands clenched tight with tension. "Come on, Commander." As if hearing her thoughts, the German Shepherd began making his way back toward the park entrance, maintaining the same convincing casualness. He was perhaps 20 yards from the exit when Emma noticed a police cruiser rolling slowly past the park. "Police," she hissed, ducking down slightly in her seat. Jason tensed but kept his hands visible on the steering wheel, ready to drive away if necessary. "Do you think they're looking for him?" Emma watched as the cruiser continued past without slowing. "I don't think so. Probably just routine patrol." Commander had spotted the police car as well and had adjusted his path, moving behind a cluster of bushes until the cruiser passed. His situational awareness was remarkable. Finally, he reached the street and trotted toward their truck, still maintaining his casual demeanor. Jason leaned over and opened the passenger door just enough for the German Shepherd to jump in. "Good boy," Emma whispered fervently as Commander settled into the back seat. "The best boy." Jason pulled away smoothly, driving at a normal pace to avoid drawing attention. Only when they were several blocks away did Emma reach for the pouch on Commander's collar with trembling fingers. Inside was a small USB drive, unremarkable in appearance but potentially containing the key to everything. "We did it," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Now let's get somewhere safe to see what's on this." They drove back to the cabin, constantly checking to ensure they weren't being followed. Emma held the USB drive in her hand, hardly daring to believe they had finally recovered the evidence her father had risked everything to preserve. Back at the cabin, Emma wasted no time connecting the drive to her laptop. Commander sat beside her, his head resting against her leg as if offering moral support for whatever they might discover. "Here goes nothing," she murmured, opening the drive's contents. What they found exceeded her expectations. Her father had been thorough, meticulously documenting not just the corruption within the department, but specific instances of evidence tampering, protection rackets, and direct collaboration with the Alvarez cartel. There were financial records showing suspicious deposits to accounts belonging to several officers, including Tanya Wilson and Captain Harris. But most damning of all was a video file, date-stamped the day of the warehouse raid. "Is that?" Jason leaned closer as Emma clicked on the file. "Body cam footage," she confirmed as the video began to play. "Dad must have been wearing it during the raid." The footage was dark and chaotic at first, showing her father and Commander entering the warehouse, moving carefully through the dimly lit space. They separated from the main team, following a predetermined search pattern. Then, a voice called out from the shadows. "Mike, over here." Emma recognized Tanya Wilson's voice immediately. The camera turned, showing Tanya standing in a small office area, gesturing urgently. "What are you doing here?" her father's voice asked, suspicious. "You're supposed to be with Team 2 on the south entrance." "Change of plans," Tanya replied. "Alvarez is here, but he's got a deal to offer. Protection for information. Higher-ups want us to hear him out." The camera moved forward cautiously, Commander at her father's side. They entered the office space where a third person waited, a well-dressed man Emma recognized from news reports as Diego Alvarez. "What is this, Tanya?" her father demanded. "This isn't protocol." "Protocol's changed," came another voice from behind. The camera swung around to reveal Captain Harris entering the room, closing the door behind him. What followed was the truth Emma had been seeking for 6 months. Captain Harris explained coldly that her father's persistent investigations had become a problem, that the arrangement with the Alvarez cartel was too profitable to jeopardize, that they had decided Michael Matthews had become a liability that needed to be eliminated. "Nothing personal, Mike," Tanya said, drawing her weapon. "But you never could leave well enough alone." The footage became chaotic as Commander launched himself at Tanya, knocking her aim off just as she fired. Her father's camera showed him drawing his own weapon, firing at Alvarez, who collapsed instantly. Then Captain Harris fired, the shot catching her father in the chest. Commander attacked Harris next, taking a bullet himself but managing to sink his teeth into the captain's arm. The last clear image was of Tanya standing over her father saying, "We'll make it look like Alvarez shot you. No one will question it." The video ended abruptly. Emma sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. Commander pressed closer to her, whining softly. "We have them," Jason said, his voice tight with anger. "We have the proof. Your father's killers caught in the act." Emma stroked Commander's head, overwhelmed by what they'd witnessed. He saved this evidence knowing he might not survive, and he trusted Commander to make sure it reached the right hands. She wiped her eyes, a new determination replacing her grief. Now we need to make sure this reaches someone who can act on it. Someone outside the Denver PD who can't be bought or intimidated. I might know someone, Jason said slowly. An old friend of my father's who works for the FBI. He specializes in police corruption cases. Can we trust him? Emma asked, her father's warning still echoing in her mind. Jason nodded. If we can't trust him, we can't trust anyone. As Emma contemplated their next move, Commander suddenly stiffened, his ears forward, a low growl building in his chest. He moved quickly to the window, peering out through a gap in the blinds. What is it? Emma asked, instantly alert. Jason joined Commander at the window, then pulled back sharply. Vehicles coming up the drive, 2 of them, black SUVs, no markings. How did they find us? Emma gasped, gathering the laptop and USB drive. Doesn't matter, Jason replied grimly. They're here. We need to move. Now. Commander was already at the back door, his body tense and ready. The hunter had become the hunted, but they had the truth now, and they would not let it be buried again. No matter what happened next, Michael Matthews would have justice. There's a trail behind the cabin, Jason said, grabbing his backpack and shoving the laptop inside. It leads to a ravine with a stream. If we can reach it, we might be able to throw them off our trail. Emma quickly collected her father's notebook and the USB drive, securing them in her own backpack. Commander remained at the back door, his posture alert but controlled, waiting for her command. They'll have the place surrounded, Emma said, her mind racing. We need a distraction. Jason moved to the kitchen, grabbed cooking oil from a cabinet, and quickly soaked a dish towel. Once we're clear, I'll throw this on the wood stove. It won't burn the cabin down, but it'll create enough smoke to keep them busy for a few minutes. Through the window, Emma could see the black SUVs coming to a stop about 50 yards from the cabin. Men in tactical gear began to deploy, moving with the practiced precision of law enforcement, or something that wanted to appear as such. Now or never, Jason said, moving to the back door with the oil-soaked towel. Emma nodded and turned to Commander. Shadow run, she commanded. The German Shepherd's posture changed immediately, his body lowering slightly as he prepared for covert movement. Jason eased the back door open, checking for any sign of the intruders. The rear of the cabin faced dense woods, providing immediate cover if they could reach it unseen. Clear for now, he whispered. Ready? Emma nodded, and Jason tossed the towel onto the wood stove, turning the heat to high. They slipped out the back door, Commander taking point as they raced for the tree line. They had barely reached the cover of the forest when shouts erupted from the front of the cabin. Move, Jason urged, leading them deeper into the woods, following a narrow trail that wound between the trees. They ran as fast as the rough terrain allowed, Commander moving confidently ahead, occasionally pausing to ensure they were following. Behind them, Emma could hear angry voices and the crash of the cabin door being forced open. They're inside, she gasped as they scrambled down a steep incline toward the ravine Jason had mentioned. Good, Jason replied. That'll buy us a few minutes. The ravine was deeper than Emma had expected, its walls steep and rocky with a fast-moving stream at the bottom. Commander navigated the descent with ease, but Emma and Jason had to pick their way more carefully, using tree roots and rocks as handholds. They had just reached the bottom when the first gunshot rang out, the bullet splintering bark from a tree nearby. Get down! Jason pushed Emma behind a large boulder as Commander pressed against her side, his body tense but unafraid. Emma peered around the rock to see 2 men in tactical gear making their way down the ravine wall, while others spread out above trying to establish a perimeter. We need to move downstream, Jason whispered. The ravine widens about half a mile from here. We might be able to find a way out. They stayed low, using the cover of rocks and vegetation as they made their way along the stream bed. The water was cold and fast, splashing over their ankles as they crossed and recrossed to maintain cover. Commander moved with them, his wet fur darkening to blend with the shadows. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, they reached a point where the ravine walls became less steep, offering a potential escape route. Up there, Jason pointed to a section that looked climbable. If we can reach the ridge, there's an old logging road that leads to the highway. As they prepared to climb, Commander suddenly froze, his attention fixed on something upstream. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Someone's coming," Emma whispered, pressing herself against the ravine wall. Around the bend in the stream came a familiar figure, Tanya Wilson, her service weapon drawn, moving with the confidence of a hunter who knows her prey is cornered. "Emma," she called out, her voice echoing off the ravine walls. "I know you're down here. This has gone far enough. Let's talk about this like reasonable people." Emma remained silent, her heart pounding. Commander's growl deepened, but she placed a restraining hand on his back, keeping him still. "You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into," Tanya continued, moving closer. "This is bigger than your father, bigger than any of us. Just give me the USB drive, and we can all walk away from this." Jason caught Emma's eye and gestured upward. They needed to move while Tanya was still talking. Slowly, carefully, they began to edge toward the climb point. "Your father made the same mistake," Tanya called out, frustration creeping into her voice. "He couldn't see the bigger picture. Some sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." Emma froze, anger replacing fear. Before Jason could stop her, she stepped out from behind the rock, Commander at her side. "The greater good," she demanded, facing her father's killer. "You murdered him for money. I saw the video, Tanya. I know everything." Tanya's expression hardened, her weapon raising slightly. "Then you know you won't make it out of these woods if you don't cooperate." "You're wrong," Emma replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The evidence is already uploaded to a cloud server. Even if you kill us, the truth gets out." It was a bluff, but Tanya's momentary hesitation told Emma it had landed. Behind Tanya, Emma spotted movement, more officers moving into position. "You're surrounded, Emma," Tanya said, regaining her composure. "There's nowhere to go. Captain Harris is up there with a team. We have the perimeter secured." "Then I guess we do this the hard way," Emma replied. She turned to Commander and gave a command her father had written in his notebook for the most dangerous situations, Guardian Protocol. Commander's response was immediate and explosive. He launched himself at Tanya with a ferocious snarl, not attacking to wound, but to distract and disable. The officer fired wildly, her shot going wide as the German Shepherd knocked her off balance and into the stream. "Run!" Emma shouted to Jason, and they scrambled up the ravine wall as Commander held Tanya at bay, keeping himself between the officer and his charges. They were halfway up when more shots rang out. Emma looked back to see Commander finally disengaging from Tanya, racing up the ravine wall with astonishing agility to rejoin them. Tanya was on her feet, soaking wet and furious, shouting orders to the officers converging on their position. "Almost there," Jason encouraged as they reached the top of the ravine. The logging road was visible just beyond a line of trees, and beyond that, hope. They sprinted for the road, Commander now taking the rear guard position, occasionally looking back to monitor their pursuers. As they reached the gravel surface, the sound of an approaching vehicle made them duck for cover. A truck came into view, but not a police vehicle or black SUV. It was an old blue pickup driven by a familiar bearded figure. "Cal," Jason exclaimed in disbelief as the ranger skidded to a stop beside them. "Get in," Cal shouted, leaning across to push open the passenger door. "Your friend at the vet clinic called me. Said you might need an extraction." They didn't hesitate, piling into the truck with Commander leaping into the bed. Cal accelerated as soon as they were in, the truck bouncing over the rough road as shots rang out behind them. "Duck," he ordered as they rounded a bend, bullets pinging off the metal frame. Emma and Jason pressed themselves low in the seats, while Commander flattened himself in the truck bed. "I've got a friend meeting us at the highway," Cal explained as he drove. "FBI agent. Jason's message got through." "You reached your contact?" Emma asked Jason, hope surging through her. He nodded. "While you were gathering your things at the cabin, I wasn't sure if the message went through." The logging road seemed endless, each bump and turn jostling them painfully as the sounds of pursuit grew more distant. Finally, they reached the highway, where a nondescript sedan was parked on the shoulder, a tall man in a suit standing beside it. Cal skidded to a stop and the man approached quickly, showing a badge. "Agent Marcus Townsend, FBI. You must be Emma Matthews." Emma nodded, relief making her lightheaded. "We have evidence of police corruption and murder within the Denver PD," she said, clutching her backpack. "My father's murder." "I know," Townsend replied. "Jason's message included enough details to get my attention. We've been investigating Captain Harris for months but couldn't get enough evidence to move on him." A distant engine sound made them all turn. 2 black SUVs had appeared on the logging road, heading their way. "Time to go," Townsend said, opening his car door. "My team is waiting at a secure location. We'll take your statements and the evidence there." As they transferred to the FBI agent's car, Commander leapt from the truck bed to stay with Emma. Townsend eyed the German Shepherd with newfound respect. "So this is the famous commander," he said. "The only witness to your father's murder." "Not the only witness," Emma corrected, patting Commander's head, "but the only one brave enough to make sure the truth came out." They drove away just as the SUVs reached the highway, but instead of pursuing, the vehicle stopped. Through the rear window, Emma could see Tanya and Captain Harris watching them leave, knowing their operation had been compromised. 3 days later, Emma stood in the lobby of the FBI field office in Denver, Commander at her side, watching the news on a wall-mounted television. The headlines scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Multiple Denver police officers arrested in corruption probe." The reporter was live outside police headquarters. In a stunning development, Captain James Harris, Officer Tanya Wilson, and 4 other members of the Denver Police Department have been arrested on charges including corruption, narcotics trafficking, and the murder of Detective Michael Matthews 6 months ago. FBI sources say the breakthrough came when Detective Matthews' daughter provided crucial evidence her father had hidden before his death. Agent Townsend approached, offering Emma a cup of coffee. "It's over," he said. "Their lawyers are already talking deals, trying to implicate each other to save themselves. The whole network is coming down." Emma nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. "What happens now?" "Justice happens," Townsend replied simply. "Your father's name will be cleared. His murderers will face trial. The department will undergo a thorough investigation." Emma knelt beside Commander, wrapping her arms around his powerful neck. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "Dad would be so proud of you." Commander licked her face once, his brown eyes seeming to understand every word. "What about him?" Townsend asked, nodding toward the German Shepherd. "The department will probably want him back, now that the truth is out." Emma stood, her hand resting protectively on Commander's head. "No," she said firmly. "He's been through enough. He's family now." Townsend smiled. "I thought you might say that. That's why I've already filed the paperwork to have him officially retired and released to your custody permanently." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she accepted the documents he held out. "Thank you," she managed. Jason, who had been giving a statement in another room, joined them. "So, what's next for you two?" he asked. Emma looked down at Commander, who sat regally beside her, alert and ready as always. "I'm thinking of going back to school," she said. Criminal justice, maybe even the academy eventually. Following in your father's footsteps? Townsend asked. Something like that, Emma replied with a small smile, but with a very special partner at my side. As they walked out of the building into the bright afternoon sunlight, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be trials, testimony, and painful reminders of all they had lost. But for the first time since that terrible night 6 months ago, she felt hope. Commander walked beside her, no longer just a link to her father's past, but a bridge to her future. Together, they would honor Michael Matthews' legacy the best way possible, by carrying on his work, upholding his values, and remembering that sometimes justice comes on 4 paws. As if reading her thoughts, Commander pressed closer to her side, his steady presence a reminder that she was not alone. She had never been alone. Even when she thought she was attending that German Shepherd auction by herself, she had been guided by her father's foresight and Commander's unwavering loyalty. "Come on, boy," she said softly. "Let's go home." And together, they stepped forward into the light.